Smoke claws at your throat first, thick, acrid, like the breath of some ancient beast roused from the earth. Then the screams sharp, layered, a chorus of voices twisting into one endless wail that echoes off stone walls slick with sweat and fear. You push through the haze, your sandals slipping on blood-smeared marble, and there they are, shadows in the flickering torchlight, young women huddled in the temple's inner cloisters, their fingers still tangled in threads of scarlet and gold, the half-woven veils of the Holy of Holies clutched like shields. Roman legionaries surge forward, shields locked, swords glinting. One girl, no more than 16, stands at the edge of the flames, her eyes wide, not with terror, but defiance. She whispers something to the others, a prayer maybe, or a vow. The air hums with it. Then she steps back and jumps. The fire roars up to meet her, swallowing her whole. The soldiers hesitate for a heartbeat, just one, before the rush begins. Chains rattle, cries sharpen into pleas. But this is only the spark. What comes next, the sorting, the march, the markets will etch itself into history's bones. And it starts here, in the heart of the blaze. What you're about to hear involves the enslavement of thousands of young women, acts of systematic violence that shattered lives and legacies. These events are drawn from ancient accounts and fresh digs in the dust, but they're raw. If this pulls you under, step away. I get it. For those pressing on, remember, we're tracing the gears of an empire, not lingering on the broken bodies. The machine grinds on. Let's see how it turned. Imagine a world where one man's ambition could redraw maps in blood. That's Rome in the spring of 70. Not the marble forums you picture, gleaming under sun, but a sprawling beast, hungry for tribute, stretching from rainy Britannia to sun-baked Egypt. Emperors rose and fell like summer storms. Nero's suicide 4 years back left a vacuum, chaos in the streets. Vespasian, a grizzled general from the backwoods of Italy, clawed his way to the throne, promising order. But order meant coin. And Judea? That rocky strip along the eastern sea, with its stubborn tribes and one glittering prize, a temple that housed God's own presence, drawing pilgrims by the thousands, their offerings swelling Rome's coffers or starving them. The Jews had revolted 4 years earlier, a spark from a greedy governor named Florus who looted the temple's silver. What started as riots in the ports bloomed into full war. Rebels torching Roman garrisons, zealots carving up the countryside. Vespasian crushed the north, Galilee's hills running red, but whispers of a greater prize pulled him to Rome. He left the endgame to his son, Titus. 28 years old, broad-shouldered, with eyes that could charm a senate or chill a battlefield. This wasn't conquest for glory's sake. This was accounting. Rebels cost, money, lives, legions, loyalty. Jerusalem held the ledger's balance. Break it, and the empire sleeps sound. But beneath the strategy, something human stirred. Titus, raised in the shadow of his father's campaigns, had seen boys turn to soldiers, villages to ash. He wrote letters home about the barbarians' folly. But at night, by lamplight, doubt flickered. Was this God's will, or just men's greed dressed in togas? The stakes, an empire's spine. Then, as now, one city's fall could echo for generations, rewriting who prays where, who rules whom. And in that rewrite, thousands would vanish, not as numbers, but as daughters, sisters, dreams deferred. Titus wasn't forged in fire from birth. No snarling infant demanding heads on pikes. He grew up in the hum of Riate, his family's hill country villa, where summers meant fishing the lakes with his brother Domitian, winters debating philosophy over wine with tutors who quoted Cicero like scripture. Vespasian, ever the pragmatist, dragged him east young 15, maybe, trailing the 7th Legion through Parthian dust, learning that war wasn't thunderous charges but endless marches, supply lines thinner than a beggar's hope. By 20, Titus commanded cavalry in Germania, quelling tribes who painted their faces blue and fought like ghosts in the mist. It hardened him, that fog. Men he'd shared bread with, one dawn, lay twisted by noon, their screams a lesson. Hesitation kills more than swords. Judea called next, in 67, under his father. The revolt was a ulcer. Festering Jews who'd chafed under Herod's ghost taxes now rose, their zealots preaching holy fire against pagan eagles. Titus led the vanguard into Galilee, storming Joppa, a hill fort that bled for 47 days. There, he met a Jewish commander, a priest named Joseph, who surrendered his men to suicide pacts only to emerge blinking from a cave, prophesying Vespasian's rise. Titus spared him, saw potential a bridge between worlds, but the cost mounted. Good Romans dead, their families' letters piling like unanswered prayers. One night, after a skirmish where his horse bolted and left him crawling through mud, Titus stared at the stars and wondered if the gods favored eagles or the single flame of Jewish lamps. That doubt, it simmered. When Vespasian sailed for the purple, Titus inherited the siege 4 legions, 20,000 shields, engines that hurled stones like angry gods. He circled Jerusalem that April, Passover swelling the city with pilgrims, turning streets into rivers of the faithful. The walls loomed, triple-layered, mocking, but Titus saw the machine, starve them, sort them, sell them. Mercy was a luxury empires couldn't afford, and in the cloisters below, young women like Miriam wove veils in quiet rhythm, unaware their threads would soon bind fates far crueler. Dust hangs heavy in the air that spring, coating everything in a fine grit that sticks to skin like regret. Jerusalem pulses, alive with the festival's lambs bleeding in the markets, pilgrim songs rising over the Temple Mount like smoke from 1,000 hearths. The air smells of roasted meat and myrtle branches, undercut by the faint rot from overcrowded alleys. You can feel the city's breath, narrow streets twisting like veins, carrying merchants hawking figs and amulets, priests in white linen gliding toward the inner courts. Up on the walls, sentries peer out, their eyes red from sleepless nights, whispers of Roman shadows on the horizon. But down in the weaver's cloister, off the women's court, it's a pocket of calm. Sun slants through latticed arches, painting gold on stone floors, worn smooth by generations. Here, 24 young women sit cross-legged, their fingers dancing over loom's crimson wool for the veil's outer layer, blue linen shot with gold for the inner, symbols of the sea and sky, parting for the divine. They're the daughters of priests or Levites, pledged young to this service. Their days a rhythm of prayer and thread. No husbands yet, no children in their arms. Their world is this: the loom's click, the chant of psalms, the cool shade of cedars overhead. Miriam is the quiet one among them, 19 summers old, with hair the color of burnt sienna coiled under a linen cap. Her hands, callused but sure, pull the shuttle through warp, her lips moving silently to the words her mother taught her. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? She came from a village near Bethany, olive groves her playground, where she'd chase her brothers through rows of silver-leaved trees, laughing until her sides ached. But 2 years back, drought withered the harvest, and her father, a minor scribe, saw the temple's call as providence. "You'll weave for the king," he said, pressing a silver shekel into her palm, his eyes wet. Miriam didn't weep. Service was honor, a thread in the eternal. Now, as Passover swells the courts with strangers' voices, she pauses to stretch, feeling the ache in her shoulders. A girl beside her, Leah round-cheeked, always humming, leans in. Hear the horns? More pilgrims? Think they'll bring honey from the Jordan? Miriam smiles, faint. Or just more dust. They laugh soft, the sound swallowed by the loom's steady thrum. Outside, the world tightens. Reports of Romans 10 miles out, their standards like iron thorns. But here, the veil grows, a barrier between holy and common, pure and profane. Miriam traces a seam, wonders if her brothers made it through the checkpoints. The air shifts, then a distant rumble, like thunder over Galilee. Horns blare from the walls, sharp and urgent. Leah's hand stills. What was that? Miriam stands, peering through the arch. Smoke curls far off, thin as a warning. The cloister holds its breath, but the looms wait for no omens. She sits again, threads whispering under her fingers. The end of the world, it turns out, arrives not in a crash, but a slow unraveling. The demand comes at dawn, 3 days after the rams first kiss the outer wall. Titus rides up on a white stallion, dust-caked, his purple cloak a slash of authority against the siege lines. He calls for parley, voice booming over the din of hammers and chants. Sons of Abraham, lay down your blades. Take your wives, your little ones, leave with the cloaks on your backs, and live. From the ramparts, a zealot captain face scarred, like cracked leather spits back. We die free, Roman dog or not at all. Titus's jaw tightens, but he nods to his heralds. Trumpets wail the terms again, in Aramaic this time, echoing off the Kidron Valley. Below, in the cloister, Miriam and the others hear it muffled, like words under water. Leah clutches her loom post. They won't yield. My father's up there, with the archers. Miriam squeezes her hand. The priests say, God fights for us. But doubt creeps, cold as the stone underfoot. Days blur. The rams pound like a heartbeat, steady, relentless. Cracks spider the outer wall by week's end, dust sifting down like ash. Pilgrims clog the courts, their faces gaunt, eyes hollow from the first pangs of want. Bread rations halve, then quarter. Miriam shares her barley cake with Leah, the crumbs sticking dry in their throats. Nights bring the worst, fires on the hills, Roman camps glowing like fallen stars, laughter carrying on the wind, coarse, triumphant. One evening, as stars prick the sky, a deserter slips through the lines, a boy no older than Miriam's brother, clothes torn, eyes wild. He collapses in the cloister, gasping tales. Legions digging tunnels, catapults lobbing stones the size of wagons. They're ghosts, he wheezes. They never tire. The women bind his wounds, offer water from the sacred pool, but his words linger, a chill. Titus calls again, voice edged now. Surrender the tyrants, John, Simon. The rest go free. Silence from the walls, then arrows. The parley shatters. It happens fast. The breach. A section of the second wall crumbles under a ram's fury, stones tumbling like God's own dice. Legionaries pour in, shields a turtle shell wall, swords thirsty. Street fights erupt, Jews in tunics against Romans in segmented iron, the air thick with grunts and the wet slap of steel on flesh. Miriam hears it from the cloister, clashes spilling toward the temple mount, screams that twist into gurgles. The priests bar the inner gates, but the zealots push back, dragging families into the fray. Fight or fall, they roar. Leah grabs Miriam's arm. We can't stay. They flee deeper, into the veil-maker's chamber, a vaulted room lit by oil lamps, looms abandoned mid-stitch. 24 girls cram in, breaths ragged, prayers tumbling over each other. Footsteps thunder closer, boots on marble, then the crash of doors splintering. Smoke seeps under the frame first, then voices. Latin curses, rough and low. The door shudders, a ram or a shoulder. It gives. Legionaries burst through, faces smeared black with soot, eyes gleaming like wolves. They fan out, swords low, chains uncoiling from belts. No fight here, one growls in broken Aramaic, gesturing at the looms. Women only. But fear makes monsters. A girl screams, lunges with a spindle, a blade flashes. She crumples, red blooming on white linen. Chaos erupts, shoves, grabs, the air rent with sobs. Miriam backs against a wall, heart hammering, as rough hands clamp her wrists. Iron bites cold. Please, she whispers, but the word dissolves in the din. They herd them out, a stumbling line, past bodies twisted in the halls, into the courtyard where flames lick the outer cloisters. The air shimmers hot, smells of singed wool and fear sweat. Titus watches from a rise, face unreadable, as his men sort the catch, the strong to chains, the weak to mercy's edge. Miriam stumbles, catches a glimpse of Leah alive. Thank God, then, the line marches on, toward the gates. This wasn't about her or any one thread. It was the Empire's hand, tallying lives like grain in a silo. And across oceans, in forums yet to burn, girls would one day learn the cost of distant walls. Word spreads, like the famine itself whispers in the bread lines, eyes darting over empty bowls. But that wasn't the worst part. Jerusalem starves not from empty fields, but from hands that hoard and burn. Factions tear at the city like dogs over scraps. John of Gishala's men from the north, Simon bar Giorah's zealots from Idumea, each claiming God's ear while torching granaries to spite the other. Better our own die than feed cowards, they snarl, flames lighting their fanatic grins. The air turns sour, heavy with the rot of unburied kin piled in alleys. Mothers gnaw leather straps boiled soft. Fathers eye their children's thinning limbs. Miriam, chained now in a holding pen near the third wall, a makeshift corral of wagons and spears, watches it unfold from afar. Her wrists chafe raw, the iron a constant itch, but it's the sounds that carve deepest. the wail of a widow bartering her earrings for a fistful of barley, the thud of bodies pitched over walls to the Roman lines below. Titus shifts tactics, his engineers damming the aqueducts, turning the city to a dust-choked oven. Water, once drawn sweet from Siloam, now rationed to sips. The women around Miriam, 200, maybe, huddled under threadbare cloaks, trade stories to stay sane. "My sister's in the upper city," one murmurs, voice cracking. "She weaves finer than any priest's daughter." Miriam nods, thinks of her own loom, the veil half done. What god needs a curtain now? From the Roman side, it's ledger work. Titus pores over reports by lamplight, his Tente island amid the siege engine's groan. "How many today?" he asks his quartermaster, a wiry Syrian named Longinus. 500 deserters, general, families, mostly wives, clutching babes, eyes like hollowed fruit. Titus rubs his temple. "Feed them, sort the fighters for the games." Longinus nods, but his pen scratches doubt. Abundance of captives means low prices at auction, a glut that devalues the prize. Reports climb the chain courier to Caesarea, then Rome tallying not souls, but assets. Healthy women fetch 20 denarii in Antioch markets. Virgins double, if unbroken. Incentives dangle. A legionary's bonus for a clean catch, no bruises to mar the sale. It spreads the machine's reach, from Jerusalem's gates to the empire's edges. In the pens, Miriam learns the angles. A guard young, from Gaul, with a face pocked like bad soil, slips her extra water one dusk. "For the pretty ones," he mutters, eyes lingering. She turns away, bile rising. But survival whispers, "Endure." Nights bring the real horror, though tales filtering through the bars. A woman from the merchant quarter, dragged out at midnight, returns limping, bruises blooming like storm clouds. "They take turns," she whispers, voice flat. "For sport." Miriam presses her palms to her ears, but the rhythm haunts, the empire's pulse beating in flesh. Yet breathers come, unbidden. Dawn light slants gold over the pen, catching a guard's whistle, a tune from the Rhine, lilting absurd against the moans. One girl, Sara, with hair like raven wings, hums back, her voice threading hope. "Remember the Jordan, cool as mercy." They share a crust, the bread's warmth a small rebellion, but the walls crack wider. Famine births monsters. In the upper city, a noble woman named Mary, once rich in perfumes and silks, snaps. Her son, 3 months old, wails through the hunger. She slays him, roasts the flesh over coals, eats half in the shadows. Neighbors smell it, burst in, but she offers the rest with a mad laugh. "Share, tyrants, I've saved the best for you." The city recoils, but it's the sign. The divine fire gutters. Titus hears, shakes his head. Their god abandons them. But in the quiet after, he wonders if Rome's does too. The machine grinds on, but cracks show soldiers muttering of endless heat, rebels whispering of messiahs. Miriam clutches her knees, prays for rain. It doesn't come. What broke first wasn't stone. It was the will to weave. Time stretches thin as the final assault looms. The air, a furnace breath that scorches lungs with every inhale. Jerusalem's third wall buckles under a hail of ballista stones, fist-sized boulders whistling like vengeful spirits, shattering parapets into lethal rain. Screams multiply, a cacophony that drowns psalms and orders alike. From the Antonia fortress, Titus unleashes the tide. 4 legions in wedge formation, shields overlapping like scales on a dragon's back, advancing under a canopy of arrows. The ground trembles with their step, dust rising in choking clouds that turn day to twilight. Inside, the factions fracture. John's men flee to the temple. Simon's hold the palace, leaving common folk to the blades. Miriam's pen erupts in panic, guards barking, whips cracking, the women shoved into lines that snake toward the Damascus gate. Chains clank in rhythm, a dirge. She stumbles beside Sara. The girls hum silenced, face ashen. "The cloister," Sara whispers. "They'll burn it." Miriam nods, throat tight. "We heard the horns at noon, the 10th of Av, though calendars mean little now." Flames erupt on the mount, orange tongues licking the golden gates, fed by pitch-soaked brands. The temple's outer courts blaze first, priests' robes catching like tinder, their cries swallowed by the roar. Legionaries swarm the steps, torches high, greed flashing in their eyes for the gold leaf that peels like skin. "Slow it down now." Feel the heat press like a hand on your chest. A soldier burly, from the 15th, his arm banded with a wolf's head, kicks in the cloister door. Smoke billows, thick as grief. Inside, the remaining weavers 80, perhaps, the rest scattered or slain, huddled by the looms, veils draped like shrouds. Their leader, an elder named Rachel, steps forward, voice steady as a shofar blast. We serve the One. Take our lives, but not our honor. The soldier laughs, coarse, but his eyes flicker, superstition, maybe, or the weight of sacred ground. He signals, chains out, but the girls murmur, a tide rising. Rachel nods, once. They move as one, toward the flames licking the inner arch. Better fire than chains, one breathes. The soldier lunges too late. They leap, skirts flaring like banners, into the inferno. Screams cut short, swallowed by crackle and hiss. Miriam, yards away in the line, freezes. Sara's hand slips from hers. No, but the guards yank her on. The blazes roar, drowning protest. Titus arrives then, horse-rearing, face twisted in the fire glow. "Put it out!" he bellows, voice cracking like the beams overhead. Water buckets slosh, but wind fans the blaze higher, devouring the holy house in a pillar of smoke that blacks the sky. Soldiers cheer or wail, hard to tell amid the din. Greed takes hold. They pry gold from walls, shatter lamps for oil that spills like tears. Miriam's line halts at the mount's base, forced to watch as the heart of their world crumbles. The air tastes of ash and copper blood from the wounded pooling in cracks. One girl ahead collapses, sobbing. A guard's boot finds her ribs. Crack. She stills. The crack in the system, it widens here. Titus, dismounting, grabs a centurion by the throat. I ordered preservation, but the man's eyes glaze months of siege, brothers buried in foreign soil. Defiance glints. Titus releases him, turns away, the weight of it all pressing like the flames. The temple falls not to rams, but to unchecked fury. Miriam's chains drag her past the pyre, heat searing her cheek. She whispers to the smoke, "Remember us. The gods, if they listen, say nothing." But the machine, it tallies, 97,000 souls netted, thousands among them young women like her, sorted for sale. The breaking wasn't the stone. It was the silence after the roar. Titus rides from the ashes 2 days later, the mount a smoldering scar, his legions herding captives like sheep to the fold. Simon Bar Giora, the zealot lord, emerges from sewers reeking of rot, dragged in rags to face the triumph. John of Gishala, fevered and broken, follows in irons. The city, leveled, save 3 towers standing sentinel for the garrison, a reminder, etched in stone. Rome endures. Vespasian hails his son in dispatches, the purple cloak his reward, but Titus tastes bile, a ornament lost. He mutters to Josephus, the defected Jew at his side, now chronicler in Roman service. Josephus nods, pen scratching truth into doubt. 1,100,000 gone, give or take the fog of war. Modern eyes peg it lower, 250,000, perhaps, starvation claiming more than swords. The captives flood markets, Antioch first, then Caesarea, prices plummeting as supply drowns demand. Miriam fetches 12 denarii low for a weaver's hands bought by a Syrian merchant who eyes her like flawed pottery. Sara, gone to the games, thrown to beasts in Berytus, her end a roar off stage. The virgins, those unbroken threads, thousands, estimates whisper tenfold the weaver's 80 shipped to Rome for the grand spectacle. Paraded through streets, ankle-deep in rose petals and cheers, they march behind the menorah, gold trumpets, temple veils stained with soot, chains gilt for the show, but the weight, unchanged. Post-triumph, the sorting, some to provinces as concubines, bodies bartered for alliances, others to mines in Egypt, backs bent till they snap, the rest to brothels in Sabura's alleys, where lamps flicker on faces that once knew prayer. Titus ascends, emperor by 79, his arch in the forum, a marble boast menorah carved eternal, but the women's shadows, erased. Power shifts. Judea a province stripped bare, taxes tripled on survivors. Ironic twists the temple's gold, melted for Vespasian's coin, funds the Colosseum, where Jewish blood oils the sand for games. The machine, it pivots, grinding anew. But in quiet corners, widows in Galilee whisper names, keeping the ledger unbalanced. Dust sifts through sieves in Jerusalem's shadow, 2023, under a sun that hasn't changed in 2 millennia. Shimon Gibson, archaeologist with hands like a sculptor's callused, precise, kneels in the Mount Zion digs, his trowel scraping layers of time. The site's a riddle. Byzantine church atop Roman ash, Herodian stone wedged under Babylonian char. But this layer, 70 CE, clear as a scar. Burnt beams, calcified by heat that warped them mid-fall. Arrowheads, Roman iron still sharp. A gold earring dropped in flight, its clasp bent like a plea. Below, older ash from Nebuchadnezzar's torch. But Gibson's team pauses here, at Titus's mark. "See this?" he says to his students, holding a shard fresco fragment, blue on white, from a woman's chamber collapsed in flames. They hid till the end. Further north, in the city of David, Kefir Arbiv maps ballista scars on flagstones, computer models tracing the siege's arc, stones arcing from Roman lines, cratering the third wall just where Josephus swore. Tangible, these cooking pots, shattered in cisterns, coins stamped year 4 of the revolt, their edges worn by frantic prayers. No grand relics, no golden veils intact, but the absent screams, lives evaporated, one by one. Gibson straightens, wipes sweat, thinks of the weavers. They weren't footnotes. They were the fabric. His finds bridge eras, proving the blazes reach cloisters gutted, streets choked with collapsed roofs. In labs, carbon dates align. 10th of Av, flames peaking. It's human scale that hits. A rib bone, etched with a curse in Aramaic, found clutched in ash. Someone's last stand. Why does this matter beyond the dig's thrill? Power's old trick. It erases to endure. Those 10,000 call them weavers, virgins. Daughters weren't anomalies. They were the cost of peace, tallied in ledgers that outlive screams. Look around. Borders drawn in ink, still wet with forgotten blood. Markets where bodies fetch prices in crypto now, not denarii. The lesson? Systems don't break on battlefields alone. They crack when the erased rise in memory, in dirt, turned by steady hands. Resistance isn't always swords. Sometimes it's threads, woven tight against the pull. Human nature bends, but doesn't snap clean. We carry the cloisters in us, still the quiet spaces where defiance hums. Flames still lick the cloister's edge in your mind, don't they? That girl at the brink, veil in hand, stepping into light. But now, the smoke clears, revealing not ruin, but roots. Those young women were meant to vanish, chained to silence, sold to shadows. But they didn't. Their threads tangle in Josephus's ink, in rabbinic whispers of weavers leaping free, in Gibson's shards glinting under modern lamps. Archaeology pulls them back, bone by bone, story by story. And now they're here, with you, because you chose the end. If this stirred something a parallel in today's headlines, a name from your own line that echoes theirs, drop it in the comments below. One line, let their voices multiply. In the end, the veil doesn't hide, it reveals.